Steven took a pill, and the next second, the TV malfunctioned and a light shone in, and when he looked back, the wall disappeared. The surroundings turned into a rainforest. He stepped on a puddle of water and hurried to the sofa. But the sofa and the mirror disappeared. Steven was confused. Where was this place? Before he could come to his senses, a crocodile swam towards him. Steven was so scared that he stepped back repeatedly, but when he turned around, he saw an ancient soldier attacking him with a sword in his hand. At the critical moment, Steven returned home. He was still in shock. Was it all an illusion? But the sword marks under his feet told him that things were not simple. In order to verify his guess, he took another pill and turned on the camera to record the footage. Sure enough, Steven's figure in the camera gradually blurred and then disappeared. The next second, he appeared on an ice field. And the snow was heavier than the day. Elsa dug the castle, if you think of that soundtrack. It will have that flavor, unfortunately. Steven was not the Snow Queen, and he almost froze into a popsicle. 7 minutes later, he returned home and saved his life. Steven soaked in boiling water and finally came to the conclusion that he had traveled through time. As long as he takes the pill, he can travel back to the past. The place he just went to was the Ice Age. Steven summed up his experience and lessons, added several layers of clothes, put on a hat and gloves, hugged a pile of firewood, stood in the same place, took another pill, and started his third crossing. Steven traveled back to the Ice Age and sat in the snow and built a fire in the snow. A primitive man approached and sat by the fire. In this way, he brought the spark of hope to mankind. After several experiments, Steven discovered that firstly, the time of travel after taking the pill was only 7 minutes. The location when the pill took effect determined the time and place of travel. For example, if he sat on the sofa, he would travel back to the jungle of medieval Europe, while if he stood on the ground, he would travel back to the Ice Age. After summarizing the two experiences, Steven had a new question. Can he take someone with him on a journey through time? He planned to use the dog for an experiment. Steven took the pills and sat on the sofa with the dog in his arms. In the blink of an eye, they returned to 90s. The owner thought that robbers had broken into the house, so he picked up props to attack Steven, who had no choice but to run away. 7 minutes later, Steven's body shook and he actually remained in this time and space. It turns out that before the 7-minute countdown ends, you must return to the place where you came from. Otherwise, you will stay in the past forever. Steven had to wait until night to go into the house, sit in the same place where he came from, and take a pill before he could travel back. There were only 30 seconds left, and suddenly the owner appeared again and started fighting with Steven. At the last second, he traveled back, but his dog stayed in the past forever. Steven stays alone now, and he is an emergency worker. After travel through time, Steven wanted to do something big, travel back in time to save people. And it all started with a few corpses. A couple took a pill, and the man walked into the elevator. The next second, the elevator suddenly malfunctioned. The trees on the floor kept jumping, the walls disappeared, and it turned into a desert. The man was stunned when he looked up. The sun was so hot that he couldn't open his eyes, the man screamed, because he fell from the tall building into the desert. As for the woman, after taking the medicine, she found that the hotel room had turned into a jungle. A strange man was staring at her. Suddenly, she noticed a poisonous snake at her feet, slowly moving toward her. Soon after, emergency personnel arrived at the scene and found that the man had fallen down the elevator shaft, which was a horrific sight. The woman was sitting on the bed and was bitten by a snake. But strangely, the woman's wounds and her poisoning reaction could only be caused by an extinct snake from the Amazon jungle. Steven racked his brains, but couldn't figure out what was going on. In the following days, strange things kept happening in the town. Someone had his heart pierced by a bone knife, with bone walls from hundreds of years ago. Falling beside him, someone else was glowing in the park, holding Romanov carvings in his hands. The death of these people, it seems unrelated, but Steven found the same pill packaging near the bodies. Is it a coincidence Steven didn't believe it? He was just about to investigate what was going on when he received the bad news that his friend's daughter had also taken the medicine and mysteriously disappeared. Looking at his collapsed friend, Steven was extremely angry. He rushed to the drugstore and bought all the medicine. Suddenly, a man came up and offered to buy the pills in Steven's hand at 3 times the price. Steven ignored him. He drove away, and late at night, the man actually sneaked into the house. When Steven heard the noise, he rushed over with a stick. Forced to do so, the man had to tell the truth. It turned out that he was a doctor, and it was he who developed this pill. But after learning that someone had died after taking it, he immediately stopped the factory and recalled the pills from all over the country. The visitor told Steven that he originally wanted to develop a new hallucinogen, but after someone died, he discovered that this drug caused hallucinations in adults, but would cause teenagers with underdeveloped brains if they took it. Steven was so angry that he laughed. "You are just kidding, time and space." But thinking of his friend's missing daughter, he couldn't help but fall silent. What if she really traveled through time? He sat on the sofa and swallowed a pill unexpectedly. He really traveled through the European rainforest, medieval soldiers, the Ice Age, and mammoths. Everything was not an illusion. He really traveled back to the past, but he is an adult. Why did he travel through time? It turned out that Stephen had brain cancer. His brain was similar to that of a teenager. After figuring out the rules of time travel, Stephen thought of his cancer and decided to do something meaningful before he died. For example, to help his friend rescue his missing daughter, he came to the rooftop where the incident happened, put a camera in front of him. He took a pill, and the next second, he traveled through time to a big tree and fell flat on his face. He was careless. There were no houses here. Hundreds of years ago, Stephen wanted to find his friend's daughter, but he ran into a bunch of strange people who were good at fighting fire. When they saw her, they rushed over. Stephen ran back quickly. He ran to the tree and came back at the last moment. At this time, the girl's best friend told him that this was not the place where the girl disappeared. She took medicine and ran away. This was bad. There was no specific location. How could he bring her back? There was no way Stephen could only tell his friend. His daughter traveled through time. By taking medicine, the friend didn't believe it at first, but after seeing the content in the camera, he began to doubt his life. The most important thing now was to find the girl's location. Before she traveled through time, the friend immediately remembered the stone by the river where his daughter often went. They came to the stone and only had the last 2 pills left. The friend wanted to go in person, but Stephen said that he was the most suitable person. Because he had cancer, he swallowed the pill and opened his eyes. He actually traveled to the Civil War. There was continuous gunfire here. He quickly hid in a pit unexpectedly. The pit was full of foxes. He tried to find her by calling out the girl's name. He looked here and there, but it was dark. Also, there were gunshots everywhere. And suddenly he saw her. Fortunately, she was still alive. Stephen gave the last pill to her. Now they need to return to the rock within 7 minutes. It seemed that the 2 of them would succeed. Suddenly, a white soldier rushed out. Oops, it's the Civil War now. In the eyes of white people in the South, blacks are unforgivable. Sure enough, the white man held a gun and asked Stephen to kneel down and be his slave. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Stephen could only lie dormant in a dress. He saw a mine on the ground and guided the white man forward. The white soldier didn't notice it at all, and he stepped on the mine. Unfortunately, it was too late. The 7 minutes were up. The girl disappeared and returned to the modern era. To reunite with her father, Stephen was left behind in the Civil War forever and could never come back. Looking at the reunited family, Stephen smiled with relief. He thought that at the end of his life, he had finally done something meaningful. If you had such a pill, would you dare to take it?